Do you want more success, more growth, more results? Then it's time for the Boundless Success Accelerator from the Modern Observer Group. This isn't your average coaching program. It's where top performers come to dominate. Weekly group sessions, on-demand coaching, a community that's got your back, and a power-packed library of tools to supercharge your business and career. No more excuses, no more waiting. Get in, level up, and start building the life you've been dreaming about. Visit us at modernobserver.com/boundlesssuccess to join today. Let's get you to the next level.
Welcome to another edition of Carnivore Bites. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin. A very interesting and somewhat comical week, Dr. Lopkin. Good to be with you again. Let's start off with maybe some more serious issues, and also quite interesting, especially as someone who likes history and politics, which we both do and our listeners do as well. And that's the Democratic Party, the state of the Democratic Party. You look at, we'll start with the DC takeover by the National Guard. Again, why is it important? It's bigger than just the structural ramifications and what's actually going on on the street. It's, again, the Democrats defending this undefendable position. Interesting, they basically are down to like an even split with minorities, blacks and Hispanics. I think that's actually going to change in the Republicans' favor as things progress. But very interesting that you have blacks and other people, primarily blacks, saying, well, this is fantastic. I can take my wife, I can take my kids out to dinner. I remember I heard a female black person saying that, oh, wow, I don't have to clutch my purse. So again, it's just it's perplexing that basically they're taking a position that one of their biggest constituencies support. I mean, they're going against a position that most of their constituency supports. Your thoughts?
Yeah,
and isn't it indicative of what's going on?
Yeah, right now, as of the last poll, which I think came out either yesterday or Monday, Donald Trump's approval rating on crime is 55%. He's actually doing better on crime than he is a lot of other issues. And if you talk to the people of DC, they are overwhelmingly for what's going on. And the reason is very simple. Before the takeover, everybody was talking about the fact, oh, well, serious crime is down in Washington, D.C. Well, yes, according to the stats, that's true. I'm not going to get into whether the stats are accurate or not, but they were down to the point where D.C. only had a murder rate 4 times higher than New York City.
There you go. That's quite an accomplishment, isn't it? So Johnny went from a 30 on his test to a 35. Job well done.
Exactly.
Perfect.
So since the takeover, there has been 1 murder, and that actually happened yesterday. So for the 2.5 weeks, there were almost no murders. Yesterday, there was the first one. And it also shows that people do not understand how the country works. And this has been driving me crazy. Because everybody's saying, oh, he has no right, Trump has no right to do this. The mayor would have to do this. No, Trump has every right to do it because it's Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. is not like every other city. It is a federal city. To put that in layman's terms, Donald Trump is effectively the governor overseeing Washington, D.C.
Yes. Very interesting though. On that note, let's delve a little bit of your insights into the political aspect of it in terms of the dwindling constituency usually rocks at one time rock solid, and what this takeover has had, and especially visually, optically
Well,
in the media. Go
there,
ahead.
there have been some absolutely hysterical articles in fairly left wing and liberal publications talking about the fact how the Democrats are just falling into Trump's trap over and over again because now, thanks to Trump doing this in DC, the Democrats are essentially defending crime. And
Exactly.
and even the liberal media is picking up on this, going, wait a minute, what are you doing? I mean, granted, they're picking up on it not so much as news, but trying to tell the Democratic Party, you need to stop this. You're killing yourself. But
Exactly.
they don't seem to care. They are so obsessed with being against anything Trump does. It doesn't matter that they're going against their own constituents. They are defending criminals. They are effectively trying to propagate crime in DC.
Yeah, but aren't they the ones who always say Black Lives Matter? Remember the George Floyd, and couldn't get enough of that, and you let these riots continue. They're actually, it's really a little sad and pathetic that they will do anything for power, even at the detriment of people supposedly they care about so much, which is blacks, Hispanics, so on and so forth.
Yeah, the
Very ironic.
the traditional constituency of the Democratic Party, which for decades has included African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Jewish Americans, and the Democrats have thrown them all under a bus. African Americans, they've been thrown under the bus on crime. Um, Hispanic Americans
Great
were thrown
society too.
right. Hispanic Americans were thrown under the bus on immigration. Jewish Americans have been thrown under the bus with the Israel Gaza war. It is absolutely amazing how the Democrats have decided it doesn't matter what their constituency actually believes. They just want to do one of two things: one, oppose Donald Trump, and two, kowtow to the incredibly loud, incredibly left wing socialist slash communist
Anti
part of the
Semitic.
party, which is honestly a very small part of the party. But because they're so loud, they've kowtowed the centrist politicians into silence. And I found it very interesting, talking about that far left end of the party. There were a number of Democratic activists who came out over the last week and a half in New York City and said, don't count on Mondavi winning this election. And these are Democrats saying this because they've looked at it. And again, we always talk about history. What Mondavi wants to do to New York is essentially what New York went through in the 70s. Well, guess what?
Mm-hmm.
New York City went bankrupt because they tried to raise taxes on the rich and the rich left. And this
So wait a second, Dr. Lopkin. I got that, but that's interesting to me, and probably, well, definitely for our listeners. I thought he was well ahead, like 20 points ahead.
in the polls, he is well ahead. But you and I have talked about this for, well, actually, it's over 10 years already. We've been talking about this, how the polls do tend to swing to the left. Well, we're also seeing now where these pollsters who traditionally ignored the conservatives in general polls, now they're even ignoring centrist Democrats. And the centrist Democrats in New York are getting very aggravated by this because they're the ones who are going to be expected to pay for everything. You can't say, "Oh, it's the Republicans that are going to pay there," because there's not that many Republicans in the city.
No, it's unfortunate though for real estate agents in Fairfield County, Connecticut, and Litchfield County, because they shouldn't. I guess they shouldn't count their money quite
No,
yet. I mean, the real estate market would be booming in those areas. It would be an
yeah,
exodus on biblical proportions.
you're going to see an exodus of rich people who live in New York City. You're going to see an exodus of businesses. I mean, Wall Street has already started opening branches of exchanges in Texas. There is
Yep.
a good possibility that the NASDAQ could pick up and move if they felt like it. Now, I don't know what their contracts are in terms of real estate. They have a lot of real estate restrictions in New York because of their offices. But you're going to see companies abandon the city. And again, this isn't speculation. We've seen this before. And it's not just here in the US. I mean, specifically in New York, we saw it in the 70s. It actually happened. We also saw it internationally in Great Britain when in the 60s and 70s they were raising the wealth tax they wanted to bring it to 90%, and you had
Correct.
all of the rock stars and all, the richest of the rich in Great Britain moved to America. Well, guess what? The Labor Party in England announced they want to do this again. They want to do a greater wealth tax. And a recent poll found that 60% of millionaires are planning to leave Great Britain. And
You know, it's
there's a good
go ahead.
possibility they will be coming to the US and they won't be going to New York.
Very interesting because you think that, it's a little blip on the radar. Being older than you, it's interesting because, and also being someone that is certainly interested in history, that Britain never really recovered from liberalism starting in the 70s. Now they
No,
never would have had
they
the
still
empire that
haven't.
they did. That's what I'm saying.
Well,
So this is 50 years of decline. So it's not just a blip, it can be everlasting.
yeah, if it's not taken care of, this can decimate not just a city but an entire country, and we've seen it
Mm-hmm.
happen. It really does come down to the old saying, those who refuse to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. And we've seen over the past 50 years, when the far left took over the teachers' union and started influencing the curriculum, less of this history is being taught. So you now have this new generation of socialists who think socialism is fantastic and, oh, yes, we know it didn't work before, but we can do it better. It's like, no, no, you can't, because the basic premise is flawed.
Yeah, quite interesting. It is I'm kind of torn apart. I like New York City, love capitalism, but even Joaquin Jeffrey said that if this guy gets in, then the midterms are finished. So it might be a good poster child for the Democrats and liberalism in a huge negative way. But if he does not get the mayoral nod, he can certainly go into the Olympics as a weightlifter.
Oh, absolutely. That was brilliant. Apparently, he is incapable not just of lifting the weight that a man his age is supposed to be able to lift, but so much less.
Yeah, they call him the soy kid. I like that, which is probably quite accurate. And just concluding on the whole Democratic turmoil, it's one thing for you and I and others to speculate and conjecture, but it's actually backed up by numbers. When you look at voter registration, if if you were a Democratic strategist or leader, you would be going poo poo in your pants It's not pretty. Like, in other words, let's just take Pennsylvania. That's in all likelihood could flip not as lean Democrat, but lean Republican, and may lose its status as a swing state, just like Ohio did.
Yeah,
Things do happen.
there are a number of swing states that Republican registration is way up. We did see during the 2024 election every district in the country swing to the right. So there's a lot going on. Now, we do have to put a caveat in that because voting for Trump in the 2024 election is not the same as voting for a Republican in the midterms. And I don't think the Republicans are going to have the same type of turnout next year that they did in 2024 because they're not
I would
going to
agree with
have
that.
Trump at the top, pulling everybody.
And there's also another factor, the time does fly. As we were prepping for this episode, when Trump first term was in office, we always talked about he could have the most amazing policy at 10 a.m. and by 2 o'clock he could completely screw it up by saying something stupid. And I wonder if that doesn't relate to his executive order with the flag burning.
Yeah, we're starting to see his administration do some of the things that are undercutting his own agenda. The executive order against flag burning stands out among them. First of all, the Supreme Court has ruled on this. It is protected speech. It is freedom of speech. Now, if he had wanted to put an executive order about flag burning, he could have clarified the ruling, saying people will be prosecuted for burning flags if they don't own the flag. You are perfectly capable of buying an American flag and burning it in protest. It's if you burn somebody else's property, doesn't matter if it's a flag or not, that counts as arson. So he could have clarified it better, but on social media, it wasn't the left that went nuts over this. It was the far
True.
right saying, no, that's freedom of speech. You've gone too far. And we're seeing little things like this. RFK Jr. just did something recently where he cut funding to mRNA research for vaccines because the COVID vaccine that was developed that way turned out not to be that effective. Well, that's actually not making America healthy again. Making America healthy again would have been about keeping the research and keeping the funding, but making the goals more stringent. COVID, everything was rushed through. You don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. And we're starting to see a couple of things that the administration's doing that's exactly what they're doing. They're throwing the baby away with the bathwater. And that can come back to bite the Republicans in the midterms.
Agreed. And again, we kind of left this, but I just want to kind of revisit it just for a second in terms of the Democratic spin cycle. And, again, taking the 10% of a 80-20 or 90-10 issue, and that's Alberto Garcia, basically the Dems rallying to his side, the senator from Maryland. Yes, Maryland, basically coming to his aid. And the funny thing that I really, really like is that he was in a situation where he had very, very a good situation in El Salvador, and I don't recall the other place they were deporting him to. And because of his lawyer, who should probably be disbarred, and these other Democratic activists, he went from fishing and kind of hanging out on the beach to Uganda. The choice is yours, Dr. Lopkin. Which do you prefer, column A or column B?
Yeah, it is. The Garcia case is very interesting because, again, most of what the Democrats have been spouting about is completely incorrect. Their whole thing is he was deported without due process and he needs his day in court. Guess what? He got due process. He was told that he had to be deported by two separate judges on two separate occasions. He's had due process. He continues to break the law. So the Democrats do not have a leg to stand on with the Garcia case. And yes, Garcia was actually offered a plea deal. He was not going to be allowed to stay in the country, but they were going to relocate him. I don't recall exactly where, but he was not going to go to prison. He was not going to go to any kind of incarceration. He would be a free man, just not in the United States. And he turned, based on advice from counsel, he turned the plea deal down. And now he's in prison, and they're talking about deporting him to Uganda. The last thing I heard, I think the same liberal judge that keeps weighing in on this case said ICE can't deport him now. They have to hold on to him, but so he's in prison.
Oh, okay, yeah, it's the Maryland man, kind of interesting. But back to his lawyer. His lawyer is an absolute genius. He had a little presser, right? And he goes, "I think it's out." First of all, this guy can't speak. He's been here for what 20 years, and he still can't speak English. But anyway, I was saying being deported to Uganda is awful. He doesn't speak the language. The language is English. It's Swahilian, but the official language is English in Uganda, believe it or not.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's a ridiculous situation. And again, it goes to the point where the Democrats are just latching on to anything to be against Trump. And what I really find hysterical is that the big debate within the Democratic Party is that they're saying, oh, well, we're not enough against Trump. It's like, no, you're not supposed to be against the president, whether it's for your party or not. You're supposed to be for your constituents. If the
Yeah,
president
that's a
is
novel
doing so,
thought.
yeah, if the president is doing something your constituents like, you should work with him on it. Doesn't matter if it's the opposing party.
If the Democrats go south, it is largely due to Trump. Trump derangement syndrome. He occupied their mind. He played them overall like a fiddle, and nothing like this has ever happened. In other words, there's never been a single person that could have an impact on an entire party like him. Very interesting. We also have, we talked about some of the ramifications, repercussions of the Democratic woke ideology. You had the Bud Light and other types of woke agendas, the movies, so on and so forth. And now you have Cracker Barrel. Your thoughts, changing the logo, getting rid of the country guy.
Yeah, I have seen so much coverage on this, and almost all of it is completely wrong. There was nothing woke about what Cracker Barrel was doing. Cracker Barrel they made some changes to their menu. They made the change to the logo. They were changing the decor. Why? Because the restaurant chain had to come out of bankruptcy. Because these Cracker Barrel aficionados who have been yelling about the logo only eat there once or twice a year. And a restaurant cannot survive on that. They had to come out of bankruptcy and make changes to the restaurant to appeal to a larger group of people. They opened a pop-up shop in New York City to try to get New York City residents interested in Cracker Barrel. And they were just abused in the media saying, well, that's not your audience. No, that's the point. They need to expand their audience because otherwise they're going to go out of business. Now, I think Cracker Barrel, again, they've been criticized up the wazoo for not paying attention to what their customers said. I think this was actually a masterclass because they decided to keep the logo, and everyone's going, oh, okay, they'll keep the logo. But they're still redesigning the restaurants. They're still making changes to the menu. So they're still making the important changes to try to stay in business and appeal to a larger audience. But now they've got all of this attention where people are going, hey, I should go to a Cracker Barrel. It's been in the news so often. Their stock soared on all of this.
It's
It
kind of
is
reminiscent of Bud Light,
of
of New
New
Coke.
Coke. Yes,
Yes.
it is very much like New Coke. And they are actually benefiting from this. And honestly, I think if they really want to remain viable as a restaurant, they need to do, and this will absolutely destroy this loyal clientele that was up in arms about the logo. But they really need to do an overhaul on their menu because right now, there's not a single thing on that menu that doesn't cause either a heart attack or diabetes.
No, they have defibrillators on every exit. Yes,
Yeah,
well
it's,
done.
so yeah, I mean this was absolutely amazing, and I look the best comment I heard about the Cracker Barrel controversy was from Dana Perino on America's Newsroom on Fox when she said, "You know what? I just don't have it in me to get excited about this."
Interesting. Well, good lead in talking about being excited. We have demographic trends, always interesting. Remember, we were on terrestrial radio, we had that demographer on. By the
Yes.
way, I wonder how our alma mater's doing. Whatever, we won't give the call signs, but with the defunding of NPR, couldn't happen to a nicer bunch of people, correct? But you
Yeah.
look at social trends, very interesting. That you have drinking, and I heard this with your ex working partner. What's his name? The business guy. I just had him in my mind. And anyway, he about 3 months
Oh,
ago,
Charles
it was
Payne.
very. Yes, sorry about that. Yeah, Charles Payne. He was talking, and I think the tagline was, "There's a hangover with liquor stocks." And the interesting part of that is young people aren't drinking. They drink once in a while, but certainly not like Animal House with keg parties. And to put statistics behind that, you have that in the 70s. Oh, no, I'm sorry, 5 years ago, 71% of people had some beverage, alcoholic beverage, within the last several days. And now it's down to 54%. That is a huge, almost 20-point differential. Now, if you're in the liquor business, that's not good. And another trend, which is really interesting, um, that you would think with the availability of pornography and other types of things, risque things, you think that the rate of young people, especially having sex, would be exploding, no pun intended. But actually, it's the opposite. About 5 years ago, and they did a survey, then young people reported that 18% of them did not have sex. These are single people over the last year. Fast forward to present day, 2025, 48%. And I've heard other articles, non-statistical, about younger people basically not having sex. Your thoughts? Why?
Well,
The alcohol,
the,
I can understand that, because one thing of this real quick about the alcohol situation is it used to be, yeah, if you're a complete alcoholic, it's obviously not good, but there's a lot more information than any amount. In fact, there was a article I read because, there's been things saying, oh, yeah, a couple glasses of wine are good for you, a couple, every day. No amount of alcohol is good for you in any way. But anyway, getting back to the sex statistics and trend, your thoughts, Dr. Lopkin?
well, neither one of these trends is actually so hard to understand. I mean, the alcohol, yes, certainly the health aspects have a lot to do with it, but it
And
also
pot.
Right. That's where I was going. It also has a lot to do with the fact that recreational marijuana has been legalized in so much of the country. I believe at this point it's 36 states have legalized marijuana either for medicinal purposes or recreational. So they actually have an option rather than alcohol that they like better. So that's really
Hmm.
not a surprise. The sex isn't so much of a surprise either. Take a look at the last several years of trends and behaviors, especially of the not just the younger generation, older generations as well. From millennials down, they spend more time on their phone. They spend more time with technology. They're actually not even speaking to people face to face anymore as often. So if you don't have that personal contact, obviously you're not going to be able to have sex with them. Another very interesting thing is this is a statistic that goes back decades. They found as porn usage goes up, actual sex goes down. Well, now we're in a brand new world where there are AI porn sites where you can actually create your own porn online, have interactive sex chats with an AI. So
No, no,
this
wait, I got to interject something on that point of AI. Don't quote me on the numbers, but it's pretty close. By 2030, it's like something crazy, like almost 20% of marriages or relationships will be between humans and AI.
Yeah, I mean that's a disturbing statistic because
True.
you should not be in an intimate relationship with an
Yeah.
AI. But that is actually what we're seeing. And so the increase in the types of porn, the increase in isolation going back to COVID, where people aren't getting together as often anymore, it's not really a surprise that sexual activity is down. Because let's face it, if you're not in the same room, it's very difficult to have sex.
That's always, yes, kind of an issue. I would also think, I like your point, which I think is the most salient point. And yes, it is the involvement with media and stuff, like people aren't talking to each other, so it's kind of hard to have sex if you're not in the same room, as you just said. But I also think it's supply and demand. Getting back to the dark ages, I remember when I was like in elementary school or whatever, and I would be over a friend's house. We were playing a game, and maybe we're playing or doing something in his older brother's bedroom or whatever, and all of a sudden oh my God, it's a Playboy. I mean, my hair could have caught on fire. I think the bigger issue is supply and demand. Just like gambling, when Vegas was
Yep.
the only game in town, no pun intended. Oh, Vegas is dying now because it's just gambling's not the forbidden fruit. It's everywhere.
And that's a very good point. I mean, taking it even further back, if you go back to the 50s, before you even had the Playboy, people were, young boys were sneaking off with issues of National Geographic because they had naked pictures of African natives. And
Hmm.
the whole thing was very taboo. Now you go online, it's like, type in, well, you can type in almost anything you want and end up at a porn site. I remember back in the late 90s, early 2000s, I was working with a tech company. I didn't work for them. I worked, but I was working on projects with them. And it was ITXC was the tech company's website. And we found out all you had to do is misplace that X. If you put in IXTC instead of ITXC, you ended up at a porn site.
I'm sure that's not the first.
Probably not. I do remember back during the dot-com boom in the late 90s, early 2000s, there were tons of porn sites that purposely chose common names and common words with one misspelling.
Yes, interesting. You talk about the porn industry. I saw this, time flies. It's kind of a common theme on today's podcast. But I was watching CNBC. It's got to be 15 years ago, and they were talking about the problem with porn, not social problem, but economic, that it's so available, so much free porn out there. It's not like the 80s or 90s where you can make a fortune from some of those companies, those big players. It's actually difficult to make money. So how ironic. It's not only are people not having sex, but you can't even make money on the thing that's taking people away from sex.
And that's actually a bigger problem than people realize, because the porn industry has been a major economic driver. Back in the 70s, if you were around then, you'll remember the big VHS beta war over videotapes, which format was going to win. And the whole reason that VHS won, even though beta was technically superior,
Better.
you got better audio, better video, VHS won because Sony, who owned beta, refused to license it to the porn industry. Fast forward to the 90s, early 2000s, the first online payment software was created so that porn sites could get you to pay online.
Yeah, very interesting. I remember my first real job out of college. It was a sales job, really great job. And my boss, who was older then, we was talking to you, chit-chatting about business stuff. And he was saying, Jeff, he read some article, like 2/3 of all revenue from a video store, not Blockbuster, but your local video store, was porn related.
Yes. Yes, it was a major driver of the mom and pop video stores before they were all put out of business by Blockbuster. That was what kept them afloat. And for a lot of businesses, there were grocery stores, there were other stores that put in video sections that included adult movies just to be able to subsidize the rest of the store.
Interesting. Well, another show has concluded. I like our new format and kind of zeroing in on some really hot issues. We'll see if Mondowney can improve his weightlifting capabilities. I heard he's doing a competition with Grandma Moses. We'll see how that goes. Anyway, our listeners can comment on the show, can't they?
Yes, let us know what issues you want us to talk about and what your opinions are on them. You can go to xvadio.com/connect. Let us know what you're thinking. You can also message us at the Carnivore Radio Facebook page. And of course, you can catch every episode of Carnivore Bites at xvadio.com, the Carnivore Radio website, the Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and other platforms that respect freedom of speech.
See you next week, Dr. Lopkin.
We'll see you then.